All right, for step one, what you guys are gonna do is take a piece of copy paper. If you want to use one of the Bristol board pieces that you have in one of your packages you got, you can use one of those too. The first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna trace your template 3 times on your paper. I would do the windows too, so you know exactly how much space you have. Once you have drawn it out 3 times, you're going to then use these to also create your 3 sketchings. You want to, if you have the ones that I had with the Lowe's ones, you'll notice some of them actually have the darkest on different sides. So you can't really incorporate the circles into it because of the openings being on opposite sides. It won't work out with the pattern, unfortunately. So you kind of have to use it to where you're not using the squares. Now I went ahead and traced out 3 different designs. One of my designs, I used the idea of closure we had in the Gestalt principles last time. I did one that was with like a feather, something simple. And then the simplest one, say if you're not real comfortable drawing, is I just did a kind of like block pattern so I could cut it out really easily. Now, once you get that, you can actually cut out your template. So I went ahead and cut mine out. I did the simple one. And then we're going to go to step 2, which is putting it on the actual. The next step is actually putting the template onto the samples. So what you want to do is you want to line them up so they're right up against there, and then go ahead and draw your lines. And then you're going to repeat that on all of your different samples. Again, here. Notice how this one is on the opposite side, but I always want to make sure that my darkest is on the top. So make sure you're paying attention. You don't accidentally do one this direction, because then your actual color wheel will be out of sync with that. So I'm going to go ahead and add all of these to all of my paint samples over here, and then after I have all those cut out, I'll show you guys the next step. One of the things I want you guys to notice when you are cutting out your templates, notice how this one had to flip and it has the straight edge. I just took one of the first ones I cut out that actually has the rounded corner and came back in and made that line. So I know when I go to cut these that they are now all rounded instead of square. So if I wouldn't have straightened this one, that line right there would have been straight. So I went ahead and just lined one of those templates up that are cut correctly and did them like that and made a line. So keep an eye out for that while you're cutting your stencils, that they're all the exact same. When you have all your pieces cut out, you'll need to go through them, take an eraser, and get rid of all the pencil marks from tracing them. Now, if you start out on the back, that way the pencil marks was on the back, it might make it a little bit easier for you. But if you didn't, and you're like me and you had some of them on the front, just take that eraser and get rid of them. So that right there is part of the craftsmanship part of the grading rubric. I'm also noticing that some of mine have writing on the front corners and some of them don't. So what you're going to want to do is go in, figure out some neat little pattern or something. I'm just going to go in and cut them out like that, so that each of them it'll get rid of that numbering on them. So once you do the first one, then you'll just go through on each one, and you can do it on the back so you don't have to go back and erase. Just line up each one, draw it out, and then cut them out. Alright, I'm going to go through and do the other 10 now and finish cleaning mine off so they're nice and clean for when I put them together. Okay, so I got all my pieces cut out, and I took 2 of my pieces of Bristol board and I taped them together. This is just some masking tape, and I flipped it over. And then I kind of did a configuration or layout that I want to do. I played with my pieces. So I noticed how that the way this little end piece ended up, and then if you hook them together, they kind of made like a little circular pattern in the middle as well. So as I go to lay these in to make them all the way I want them, the way you want to try to do this is you can first start to do a plus sign. And I would start off with your yellow up top. I wouldn't completely glue it down. You can tack glue it, but I wouldn't glue it till you have all of your pieces in. And then line up your pieces. That would be and then as you get those pieces in place, then you can start actually getting everything else where it's supposed to be. And then once you get a pretty good idea of how it's going to start going around, that's when you want to start gluing some of the pieces in. So I've got these kind of 4 lined up the way I want them. So I'm going to hold them down. Take some of my Elmer's. Use your glue stick too. I like to use Elmer's or something thicker though. And the rule of thumb with Elmer's is you always hold it for about 10 seconds. And then while I'm holding these other ones down still, I'm going to bring it up and add a little bit of glue underneath. Take your time with this so you can get it the way you want it. So everything starts looking like you want it. And then keep filling it in all the way around. And I'll show you how to do the labeling and all that in just a second after I get all my pieces put in place. Okay, so I got all my pieces glued down. So you notice I made sure as I was gluing, I have my complementaries are across from each other on the color wheel no matter where they lie. I could draw a line if I needed to. my primaries have a triangle and my secondaries have a triangle. Then I'm gonna go through and I'm gonna label these as neat as possible. I would first start with your hues or your color names. You can start off in each. Just make sure however you do it, it is uniform around. Okay. I'm gonna start off with mine actually on the edge here, so it's the same all the way around, because I've not only got to do my hues, I've also got to figure out interesting ways to do like primary, secondary on that. So, all right, here I go. Okay, I finished labeling and I finished my different color schemes or families. If you notice, on each I have the hue and then also one of the main categories they belong to. So I have my yellow and my primary, and then I have yellow, green, intermediate. Notice my primary is always listed first. Make sure you do that. That is key. You cannot put green, yellow. So I have primary, intermediate, secondary, all the way around. And then I also have, finally, my color schemes. So you need to have your primary, your secondary, warm colors, cool colors, complementary colors, 2 examples of split complementary, and then 2 examples of analogous. And you want to keep it between 3 and 5. 5 starts to push it a little bit, so if you see over here, I did green through blue, purple. When you start to get into actual purple, you have a little too much red. You could sneak in to yellow green a little bit because it still has that green to it. So, but I stuck to these right here. You want the analogous ones to look like they all go together. For instance, if you went up here and you went green this way, you couldn't add the yellow orange in it because it has that red, so it changes the feeling of it. So it'd be these 3 here that would go the best together. And then if you're wanting to go further down, you want to go more this direction then and cut out some of the yellows. The final thing you're going to do is on each of your artworks, make sure you can read it. So if you need to go over some of this in pen when you take a picture, I need to be able to see it. So your image will be one of the whole thing all together. And then you also want to make sure I can see each of these. I'll be looking for them for comprehension. And then you also need to have your label on it. So it says Professor Harding, Spring 2020, the class, and the date. I'll be looking for those images and then also your image of your sketches. And you can just take your template and just lay it back into place. Just take your picture of it.